Harris Faulkner was doing her show and brought two correspondents on. One of them was Mary Harf, I think it is. And Mary very nicely explained the truth about Donald Trump, why he was removed from the ballot in Colorado, according to the recent Colorado Supreme Court decision. And obviously that made Harris Faulkner and the other guy on screen very uncomfortable and unhappy. Before playing that clip, it's a good one, let me show you a clip that Harris Faulkner will be referencing over and over, and it's this from Biden.
Mr. President, your reaction to the Colorado ruling on Trump and the ballot?
I'm not going to comment on a court case. That's up to the court. That's all I have to say.
Is he an insurrectionist? Is Trump an insurrectionist, sir?
Well, I think certainly you're self-evident. You saw it all. Now, whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. There's no question about it. None. Zero. And he seems to be doubling down on about everything. Anyway.
So pretty clear he's not going to weigh in on the active, litigation, but can say on the matter as it stands, obviously Trump engaged in insurrection. Now take a look at this.
Good at that job. What would you tell President Biden after he said he first wasn't going to weigh in and then call the president an irrefutable insurrectionist?
Well, look, I think the bigger threat to democracy is what Donald Trump did, which was trying to overturn an election.
So you're not going to answer my question.
I think President Biden is right. I was about to, Harris. I think President Biden is right not to weigh in on the court cases. The Supreme Court will undoubtedly take this up. It's a pretty right-wing activist court. I think they will rule in Donald Trump's favor. But it is curious to me how Republicans pledge such fidelity to the Constitution, except when it's inconvenient for their candidate, who we all saw with our own eyes, encouraged rioters to attack the Capitol. And to be very clear, Republicans had no problem with the courts deciding an election in 2000. And voters of all parties, Democrats, Republicans, should be concerned, regardless of the legal case, Harris.
So, Maria, you
Trump,
are doing what the president
Republican
did.
Nominee.
You're weighing in on a case. And I know you say, oh, he's not weighing in, but he did, because he said he's an irrefutable insurrectionist. Jason, I know you want to jump in. Go ahead.
But Harris, that wasn't a legal argument.
Let Jason jump in. You guys can go back and forth. Go ahead, Jason.
That's a political one, right?
Murray, you're accusing him of being an insurrectionist, but he wasn't charged with that, and he wasn't convicted of it. In fact, when it came to the impeachment part, he was found not guilty. So how are you going to exclude somebody from a ballot who was never convicted of a crime?
I'm actually not arguing that he shouldn't be on the ballot. The legal argument to me is a separate one, and I think the Supreme Court will settle that. I'm all for more people being on ballots, not less. That's what I think is better for our democracy. I'm making a political case here that the Republican presumptive nominee tried to overturn an election,
we get
has
that.
been charged
we
with
get that,
dozens
Marie,
of felony
but the point
counts
that we are
and shouldn't be
arguing
president
today
for those reasons.
Has to do with what Colorado has done. And I want to make sure I understand you. So what you're saying is it was wrong to take Trump off the ballot. And what you're also saying is politically,
that's not what I said.
Okay, so you think he should be taken off the ballot?
I am not a legal expert. I think the 14th Amendment is a gray area where legal experts across the partisan divide have different opinions on what actually it says. And again, Republicans pledge fidelity to the Constitution most times, except for right now, which is curious to me. The court will weigh in on this.
Marie?
Donald Trump should be held accountable. He should be, and I don't know what that looks like, but he should be.
We'll move forward.
We do pledge fidelity to the Constitution. And if you're convicted of being an insurrectionist, you're excluded. But he was never even charged with it, and he was not convicted of it.
All right. We'll move.
I think previously, Josiah, years ago, I would have told you that Fox News wouldn't go this far. Meaning now they're willing, just for business purposes, to say, let's get elected the guy who tried to, for the first time in American history, say, no peaceful transfer of power. I'm not doing that whole democracy thing. I'm keeping myself in power even though I lost. And I know I lost, but I won't accept it. And I was obviously wrong, but it doesn't matter. Right-wing media now, all right, perfect. We're on board. We're going to try to make the case that that was all perfectly fine. And then the weird pretending from Harris Faulkner that she doesn't understand the difference between Biden weighing in on specifically the decision or what the Supreme Court might decide, and just saying, you're asking me about the issue and I'll leave it up to the courts to figure out the constitutionality of what Trump did. But I can tell you, yes, he engaged in insurrection. It's self-evident. That's the perfect response from the president. He doesn't have to go, I won't talk about the time my predecessor tried to overthrow American democracy. He should mention that, but he's saying he won't weigh in on the litigation specifically. Perfectly fine.
Yeah, so I've got a lot to say about all of that, and just indulge me here for a minute. So, number one, President Biden answered the question tactfully when they asked him about the Colorado Supreme Court decision. But I want to make this very clear to everybody. The president is under no obligation, legal or ethically or otherwise, to not give an opinion. If Joe Biden wanted to walk up to those reporters and say, you know what, I think they got it 100% correct, and it doesn't matter that the Supreme Court's reviewing it, because the president is also entitled to First Amendment protections. Donald Trump never said no comment to anything, even when he was president. He gave his opinion all the time. It would perhaps be inappropriate if the Department of Justice were involved in the Supreme Court case, because Biden's the head of the Department of Justice ultimately, but they're not, and so it's okay. So Harris Faulkner is again trying to grade Biden on a curve. No, Biden shouldn't talk about this. Well, no, he can if he wants to, and you would be okay with it if it were Donald Trump, number one. Number two, to your point, he actually didn't contradict himself at all, because he even says it in his answer. Like, listen, is Donald Trump an insurrectionist? Yeah, of course, it's self-evident. Now, the legal question as to whether or not that applies, the 14th Amendment applies, he says, I'll leave that up to the courts. So there was no contradiction there at all.
Absolutely.
Number three.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No, I was just going to say, number three. Marie Harn, the blonde correspondent there, I mean, she brought the receipts. Like, she was incredible. And she made the point, this is so important. It is important, friends, to point out the Republican Party's double standard every chance you get and be unapologetic about it. When you're having a conversation, if for whatever reason you dare to go here, if you have a conversation or a debate with a MAGA uncle or a Republican friend or whatever, and they want to talk about that, you should bring up the double standard. And the thing that I always find it's important is to ask a Republican who has an opinion on this, what if the shoe was on the other foot? How would you feel if it was Trump making an opinion or a Supreme Court making a decision against a Democrat? And it's important to pursue that. Luke does this all the time in his conversations, and certainly with Mocha's with MAGA too, and it leads to some of the best moments. It's important to get them on the record. I'm asking you, you say this is your standard. Well, what if the shoe was on the other foot? Because very often they'll hesitate. And I love how she pointed that out. She said, listen, you all talk about a Supreme Court making a decision. In Bush v. Gore in 2000, a partisan vote on the United States Supreme Court when justices appointed by Republican presidents made a decision which made a Republican president in 2000. Not a peep from Harris Faulkner, I imagine, or Jason, I think his name is Chavez. Not a peep from him too, I imagine. Where's your outrage there? If it's okay for that to be the case, why can't this state Supreme Court make a partisan decision in the opposite direction? Unless, of course, it's really not about the courts and it's really just about whatever outcome you like. And I think it is important to relentlessly hammer that point when in a discussion, and I'm glad she did.
Yeah, the next thing I want to do, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
The next thing I want to do is go through some examples of what we've seen on Fox News, specifically pushing this rhetoric that's saying, oh, they're trying to cause violence. They are the left, but they keep doing this and there's going to be civil unrest. There's going to be backlash, violence, encouraging it. Take a look.
It feels like the left wants violence because that's where this is going. We're being baited, so their actions are justified. That's how it feels. The more the left overplays their hand, the scarier this gets.
It doesn't make what you're saying any more acceptable when you go, they want you to be violent. They're doing things that would obviously make you justifiably want to be violent, it's so dangerous. And as I said previously with the Harris Faulkner clip, I don't get how even all the money and the fame and the ratings, anything could make you sleep at night properly when you're doing stuff like this, when you're spewing garbage out in the world. And these are smart people. They have to know they're wrong, and they have to know this is absurd, but they're choosing to broadcast to a massive audience of people, many of which don't know better, the message of what the evil, satanic, radical left, socialist, Marxist, communist, fascist, all those terms go together when Trump does them. They are making you want to be violent, right?
Yeah, so again, projection. As I've said when we did a video about Lauren Boebert, more projection than a movie theater. You know, again, Ben Shapiro, right-wing darling, said very famously, facts don't care about your feelings, gang. Facts don't care about your feelings, folks. And to right-wing commentators, I say this, the facts are abundantly clear. The left is considerably less violent overall than the right. And the right has become increasingly more violent since Donald Trump became the cult leader of the modern Republican Party. Those are the facts.
And let me just jump in and say, you can have facts in this world, stats can verify things, and there can actually be a truth on this. Every time I've said that same point, that people go, Trump supporters, and go, no, the left's way more violent. I know that is how you feel because you watch Fox News and they only show you the left-wing examples, but this isn't a matter of opinion. Whenever we analyze politically motivated violence, way more right-wing. Sorry.
No, 100%. And it's correlated with Trump's rhetoric, his increasingly deranged and unhinged rhetoric. And again, we see it. So when Trump was indicted in Georgia, the Georgia grand jury, they were doxxed and the recipients of death threats. Judge Tanya Chutkan, who is presiding over Trump's D.C. court case, she has been the recipient of death threats. The Colorado Supreme Court, which just kicked Trump off the ballot, they've been the recipients of death threats. The Trump part of the MAGA movement is inherently violent. Donald Trump is an inherently violent demagogue, and he isn't stopping. Like, he is actively encouraging it among his base, and the stats support it. So when Laura Ingraham and Jesse Waters talk about the violence of the left, again, they have no credibility. That's not to say that the left has never been violent and never can't be violent, but we shouldn't traffic in false equivalences. There is a clear and meaningful difference. As violent as the left can be, statistically speaking, it's been affirmed again and again and again with respect to politically motivated violence. It is a fact the right is worse. And anyone who tells you otherwise, folks, if you're watching, they're either lying or they're politically biased, deluded in a way that you would not possibly believe. It's one of those two options.
And for some reason, I'm going to end this segment on a clip of Kellyanne Conway saying this.
Trump on those grounds, or that he's been convicted. So it is in doubt. And when you look at what I just think the Democrats wake up every morning, Emily, and they look at the calendar. The iPhone says January 6, 2021. The date never changes. And then they get an electric vehicle and go get an abortion. I just described the Democratic Party to you in 7 seconds. That's it. That's what I see. But
I covered that clip, Josiah, initially on a bonus show, lukebeasleyshow.com/membership to get access. And aside from the electric vehicle getting an abortion, we can just ignore that. That's her trying to be funny. The January 6th thing, yeah, sort of. I'm thinking about January 6th, meaning the overall attempt by Trump to stop the peaceful transfer of power because we're deciding on whether or not he should be president again as a country. Every single day. You're exactly right. That is on my calendar every single day to think about the fact that right now we have somebody who tried to block peaceful transfer of power, the fake elector scheme, the pressuring of local election officials, the invoking or inciting of a mob to attack the Capitol. Also, let's just remind ourselves, joking about being a dictator, saying he's going to lock up his political enemies if he gets into office again, called for the termination of the Constitution, called for or alluded to the execution of his former top general because he was not licking Trump's boots enough. This is absolutely something, especially if you keep up with politics, you should be thinking about every single day. Kellyanne Conway is correct on that.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Number one, I can't believe we're ending this clip on Kellyanne Conway, or this video on Kellyanne Conway. We're supposed to end things on a high note, Luke, and you chose one of the lowest notes imaginable, so shame on you. Second, you name dropped your website. I will say, definitely get a membership, but also you all should check out like the news section because there is a very, very good and studly writer who works for LukeBeasleyShow.com/news.
It's good stuff.
It is. It's not bad. It's not bad stuff. But the other thing is, nobody should apologize on the left, or people who, you don't even have to be on the left. There are a lot of conservatives who feel this way, actual principled conservatives, as rare as they seem. Never apologize, folks, for being focused on January 6th and the implications of Donald Trump's attempts to overthrow an election. To sweep it under the rug, especially when he's the Republican frontrunner still and hasn't faced yet any real meaningful consequences for his actions, it's perfectly fair, it would actually be unreasonable, I would argue, to not be really worried about that, to go, it happened, whatever, Trump's not going to do it again. That is unreasonable. He has no limiting principle. He has not been taught a sufficient lesson. Like even now, he's been charged. He has not been convicted. He is not serving jail time yet. There's the threat of him potentially being removed from the ballot. It hasn't happened yet, except in Colorado, and that decision was stayed pending review by the United States Supreme Court. We have every reason to be absolutely concerned about January 6th and a repeat. Never apologize for that, and never allow Trump's actions to be normalized. And that's hard. I struggle with it as somebody who despises what Trump has done to the Republican Party. I have my own politics channel where I talk about this quite a bit. Even I find myself going, and then moving on. We shouldn't do that. We should be horrified by Trump's actions when they happen.
Absolutely. One more time, plug everybody with your channel, Josiah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, folks, you can find me at youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics, one word. And Luke, I appreciate the invitation. It's always fun to do this with you.